All right, welcome back to Context and Clarity Live. It is Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern, so it's time for another great conversation around the business of architecture, around the things that matter most to you, the architect, no matter what your context is, no matter where you are, no matter what your firm is. We like to dig into those things that matter most to your success. So welcome back. Glad that you're here. I am joined, as always, by Katie Kangas. Welcome back from Minnesota. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks. Good to be here and talk with Emily today.
Yep, glad you're here. Before we went live, we were talking about um, bugs. Talking about Minnesota. We're talking about weather. We're talking about bugs. What did your daughter say about?
Oh, she cried when it got over 80 and said she missed winter because all the bugs were dead.
I
So, yep,
love
4-year-olds
that.
say such good truths.
They are the truth tellers. This is certainly the case. Oh boy, we're gonna have to have her on as a guest before too long. So
Oh, I don't know if we have enough time for everything
okay,
she would say.
we'll do a long episode. But welcome back. Glad you're here. And for everybody else out there, as you get here, say hi. Let us know that you're here, and let us know where here is for you. Where are you joining this conversation from? I see John Jones. Looks like he's first in today. He's joining us from Connecticut. John, welcome back. Mark R. LePage, welcome back. He says, Happy Tuesday. That's Carolina for hello. Y'all is Carolina for hello. Yes, I was in the y'all country yesterday or for about 36 hours as well. Mark Inns, welcome back. Glad you're here. Chris Novelli says he almost forgot what time it is. What time is it, Chris? Glad you're joining us today from Massachusetts. Red Mike from Germany. Glad you're here as well. Red Mike is joining us on LinkedIn. Glad you're joining us from that platform. And for those of you that are on Facebook, if maybe you're commenting away and you're saying, hey, why aren't my comments showing up like Chris's or Mark's or the other Mark's or John's? Well, it's because you're in a closed Facebook group, and Mark Zuckerberg has made some rules. He says that your name, your likeness, your comment can't come out unless you get permission. So if you go open up a separate browser window, type chat.restream.io or .io/fb. Having trouble with the reading today, apparently. A couple of clicks later, you can give Facebook permission to communicate with this platform that we use here, and your comments will show up like Chris's and Mark's, etc. So chat.restream.io/fb. That's where the magic happens. Solves all of your problems. And if it doesn't, there's no guarantee. There's you didn't read the disclaimers before you got started, but I'm pretty sure that'll take care of it. Chat.restream.io/fb. Glad that, and we'll be glad to have your comment showing up on the screen. Chris says it's really tough getting into the swing of things this week. I hear you. I hear you. The travel schedule has gotten me, has bit me a little bit lately. So I feel that. Let's see. Chris says he's maybe only gotten 2 hours of actual work done. Well, that's all right. Tomorrow's another day. Maybe we've got to give ourselves a little bit of grace and allow ourselves to work 2 hours in a day sometimes. So again, if when you're joining us, say hi. Let us know that you're here, and tell us where you're joining from. We're going to jump into this conversation. It's going to be a good one. We have a return guest, and I was trying to. I think it's second time, but it might be third time as I think about it. We'll see if she knows. But our guest today, um, I'd say she's a translator of emotions whose work is soulful, it's cliche free, and it's mission driven. She's a brand strategist and co author of the book Rooting Up Essays on Modern Branding. She's also was one of the speakers at the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting in Austin, Texas last year. Lots of great feedback from that presentation. She's a co founder and the CEO of the brand strategy firm Root and River. Emily Soccorsy, welcome back to Context and
Thank
Clarity
you.
Live.
Hi. Hi, Jeff and Katie. Hi, everyone. It's good to be with you all again. I think it's the third time. I think
Okay.
it's the third time. It
I
might be
think
the
that
fourth. Now I'm just adding on. the third for sure.
It could be whatever you want it to be. I was thinking about that. I was going to say second, but I thought, no, I'm pretty sure this is the third time. So,
Because
but
we had
plus,
one before the get together, I think.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
before our
yeah,
gathering. Yeah.
yeah. We've had a lot of good fun together, and a lot of. I know you've been working with some in the community, and you've shared a lot with this community. So, it feels like you're just part of the community at this point.
I love to hear you say that. And like, I see John in the chat and he says no, which is sort of like an inside joke. It's sort of like a root and riverism, right? That
Yep.
you can say no, and no is a complete sentence, and you want to know who you want to say no to.
Right.
So we have, this is really fun. I'm getting to be part
It
of the
is.
community.
It is, yeah. You're an honorary architect. You're an honorary member of the community now. So it's great to have you here.
That's awesome. It's great to be here. My best friend and I, as we were leaving high school and going to different schools and trying to figure out what we were going to study, we were both very alike. She chose architecture, and so she's an architect, but I chose a different path, obviously. So now it's just full circle, member of this community.
Well, very good. It's a small circle too, and you know I think your work to me, especially for this community, for smaller firms, um, many of whom are sole practitioners,
Mhm.
you know, and getting a little bit larger from there certainly. But I think the soul and the purpose that you bring to your branding work for people like architects, I think is really important. I think it really resonates with a lot of our community, and I really appreciate you know you can jump to your approach and the way that you like to design brands. That's not the right way to say it, but intrinsic branding and everything else. But I think that there are an awful lot of people in this profession, and not even just in small firms, that look at their work and look at their passion for what they do. And it's very different than owning the ice cream shop, and it's very different than owning the accounting firm, or you know whatever the other things are, because they bring something different to their work, and their even their identity is
Mhm.
tied to this. And so I think your approach to branding and helping people understand what their brand is, I think that's one of the real reasons that it resonates so much. So why don't you give us a little clue? Let's start with what have you been thinking about lately? You had before we went live. I mentioned a post that was it yesterday or the day before,
Mhm.
that I read, and I thought, you know, that really resonates with me.
Mhm.
The idea of evolution.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff, for all that. Yeah, so lately I've been thinking about how we change. And a lot of I see this in my work where I work with a lot of established brands, and it runs the gamut, big brands, small brands in between. And they sort of have the coming up for air or pull the car over moment where they've achieved success, they have a good team, they have a good inherent culture. But when they come up for air, they're like, "Oh, something's off. Maybe I'm feeling like not very fulfilled, or we're putting all this effort in. We're running a successful business, but," and these are my words, like, "Where's the heart in it? Like, where matter?" It's a little bit of identity and reflection on who they are, and then it's also like there's often this gap. So they may be doing that personally and not realize that that's also showing up in the brand. But then they at the same time realize that the brand feels a little off, but they're not fully making the connection that as they've changed as a human being, whatever they've been going through, that has shifted the way they're showing work, that shifted that they're having with their partners in the firm or the people on their team. And it's so subtle and so gradual that oftentimes they're not realizing it. What happens is this gap opens up and then it's like a little bit of a, oh, okay. What do I do now? I'm fulfilled in this moment. And a lot of times that's where our paths cross, and there rises a desire to get more clear about who they are, really, because branding is really just a process of introspection first. That's why we call the way we do it is intrinsic branding. So there is this part of it at the very foundation that is an inward journey. What do I really believe? Why am I doing this? And then how is that getting translated and showing up in the brand? But yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. That's resonant for me personally. And I still know people are sick of talking about the pandemic and what happened. It's a lot to have gone through in the last few years. And if I have not met a person who hasn't been changed, either drastically or significantly, but subtly, a little bit at a time. And so I think maybe we're working on that personally, but we're not working on that. We're not seeing the connection to how that plays out in our work, or making that adjustment maybe comes last
Yeah.
in the flow. That's kind of what I've been noodling on.
Yeah. It struck me as you were describing that there are a lot of architects, especially ones that work on residential projects, right? They've got whatever the makeup of their client is, whether it's a couple or it's a single person or, whatever. Because they're working on one of probably if not one of the biggest investments in this client's life. Architects will often say that they're part architect and part therapist, or marriage counselor, or some version of that. And as you were describing that, I thought, well, you may feel the same way, because you're almost talking about providing therapy for your clients
Mhm.
in that introspection,
Mhm.
in that finding who we are. And then I guess in the case of what you were describing, in the finding how we're changing. um,
Mhm.
and I think you're exactly right. The pandemic has I mean, it's changed the world, right?
Yeah.
And we're in it. Um, so when you're working with clients, and especially now, I guess 2023 is probably a little bit different than
Mhm.
2018, 19. What are some new ways that you're thinking about, or looking about, or looking at, or new techniques that you're using to design and build these brands?
Yeah, it's always changing, and it's always, we have a mantra here at Root and River, which is we believe in defiance, and the way that we live that out is we find the flow and forget the formula. It's so easy in the space of brand and sure and marketing to have a formula, apply that across the board, but we really have a methodology, a way of thinking, a philosophy of intrinsic branding that we are then adapting, and we are coming alongside our clients wherever they're at to move them through that. Um, so I think in a lot of the work I've been doing, and this kind of connects to what I was writing about the other day on LinkedIn, is um, this just a reset of vision, a of purpose has changed. So I find in our sessions that we're spending a little bit more time there than perhaps in the past. Sometimes in the past, it was sort of like we didn't spend as much time there, and now I'm carving out more time, because I think to get people plugged back in to a vision that has dramatically shifted, and to see their place in it, and spur imagination again. It's a tender and vulnerable place to be, and really necessary for the business and the brand. And I think even if you had shifted during the pandemic, um, you've also shifted again, is what I'm seeing. Like, there have been additional shifts within the last 6 months to a year. I mean, I think this year started off with a lot of fear around a recession, and that's sort of this clouding over everything. And it's, I think of the analogy of, like, if you want a butterfly to land on you, don't go chasing it, right? You like hold out with a, beautiful flower or a piece of fruit. And that's really kind of what we're doing in our sessions with our clients of like, let's dream a little bit again. Let's imagine. Let's find something that has meaning for you. And that might be, and we used to do 5 to 10 years in our visioning. Now we do 3 max, because that's really all, given our uncertain world, all the brain can kind of get to. So yeah, that's something I'm seeing and we're adjusting to different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me. Sorry, go
That's a
ahead, Katie.
different level of goals for that 3-year term. And it's interesting to me how you guide people through that decision-making process to come to that core. I was reading one of your articles, and it was about the simplicity that you can find a lot in finding that simple message that is at your essence and at your core. I was curious if a message could be too simple. What's the difference between simple versus boring?
That's a great question. And I think the difference between simple and boring is usually cliche. Sometimes a cliche is in some cases very simple, but if it's cliche and you've heard it before, then it's not. It falls out of the simple. But our simple is one of our rubrics, but that comes along with unexpected and emotional. So it has to be that really keeps us away from boring. So you can have a statement that's not unexpected and not emotional, and then it's boring. So we really try to push to, sometimes you can say something that's a message, like in a session, someone will throw something out and it's like, yeah, that's true, but like, so what? Like if you can say so what afterwards, that's another good test. If it starts conversation. So basically, if you have a simple statement, but people go, oh, never thought of it that way before. And then there's more, there's more of a dialogue. That's also a really good test that you're gone beyond just simple into also unexpected and emotional.
I love that it aligns with your own branding, that it needs to be something that can grow. It's not just a dead little seed. It's something that's going to become more. I love that.
Yeah. And that's one of the interesting things in our session. It's like, we'll be crafting and I mean, we're word nerds over here at Root and River. So we're just like digging into the language and we're throwing out ideas and collaboratively with our clients. And then there'll be something thrown out. And sometimes it just sits for a minute and then there'll be a loop back. Someone will be like, when you said this. And so then sometimes we'll look down, it's like 15 minutes later. Ooh, we're still talking about that idea. We've got something here. So just almost being observers of our own behavior in the container of a root session or the workspace that we create.
And I think it's important to point out, I think, that we're talking about simple. We're talking about simple in I guess the phrase and in the message, but that doesn't mean easy. And often I think it's the opposite, right? Simple but not easy. And I was looking at Red Mike's comment here, which okay, it doesn't all fit on the screen, but I'll read the whole thing. Red Mike says architects could be seen as the first social influence back in the 20s. Le Corbusier and Walter Gropius were pushing their brand, saw the power of cinema, made short films about design work and ideas. It was 100 years ago. Why are architects in general so slow to follow? To me, I agree. Architects are slow to follow. Okay, architects are slow to adopt or adapt to many things, but from my point of view, we're not the only ones, because what Emily is talking about, what you're talking about, Emily, is deep, and it's not easy. To me, it's really easy to, I don't know, I've got some errands to run this evening. Maybe I'll go to Target this evening to pick a couple of things up. There are plenty of things at Target that also have terrible to no branding. So I think it's, to me, I think it's the difficulty in achieving the depth of what you're talking about that keeps many brands away from it. And I think especially architects, it takes a lot of work to get there, I think. How do you feel about, I mean, you can talk about the profession. You've got lots of your friends and also clients that are here. What do you see about the adaptation of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think architects are blessed with the, ability to see all the pieces in the whole. They're one of those professions where that's part of being, your training, and so any endeavor, I think there's about, okay, yeah, great, rebrand, but that's gonna be like a big effort, and, it's intimidating, it's overwhelming, and I also think in general, the glut of information about brand, about marketing, about social media, it's just it's a mosh pit of ugliness. And I live in this space. I don't It's just too much. It's far too much. Pretty much designing that you can kind of rely on with a bunch of false promises. So the whole milieu is just overwhelming. Um, and the actual act of getting clear about your brand is simple, to use that word again. Like when you have a when you've done that work, when you came out of the water and you swam to shore and you came out for a couple days, done that work and you're clear on that foundation, that wipes away a, a lot of the complexity, because now you haven't created a brand, you just saw what was within, articulated it, and are excited and a little scared, a little nervous, but excited to go share it. I think one of the biggest misconceptions, and I see this time and again um, with clients, is that they have this sense that brand needs to be found, and it isn't. It's just it's a coming out. It's a this isn't something new. This is who we are. This is who we always have been, and now we're just saying it. And that feels exciting and momentous, in a place where you're moving forward. Now, I will also say, for architects, from my experience, because there is this, say, a servant mindset, like there is this, you are serving the art and you're serving the function and you're serving the client. So that feels like an overlay to get to the place where you are saying, no, this is me and this is what we believe. It's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. And we often say at Written River, like, humility is a beautiful, beautiful quality and a terrible brand strategy. So we don't want, it's great, not when you're looking at your brand, because your job, and I see John commented about the butterfly, like, your job is to be findable as who you are. It's not actually to go out and catch a bunch of butterflies, chase them down. It's to be confident in what you're offering and saying, this is who we are. But that is uncomfortable when you're coming from a servant mindset. Yeah. And that fear of being self-promotional, salesy, that of ugliness. So images into that answer. It was a very image-driven answer, a lot of metaphors.
Well, for all these visual people, I think it's very fitting. I think there are a couple of important lessons in there. One, you mentioned creating a brand, and that's really different than what you're talking about, and the brand and finding the brand. Um, and I think a lot of us would think about, oh, well, we've got to, and I'm sure I've used that language before: create a brand, design a brand, build a brand, etc. But you're talking about that in a different way, and I think part of the uncomfortableness in this profession is, and I stir the pot with this all the time, but there are a lot of architects out there that have said this is the type of work, this is our ideal project type, and they never make that leap to our ideal client is the people that I need to attract, those butterflies that I need to attract to land on my hand. Right? They've not made the leap to that point, which is, I think, one of the reasons that this is also so uncomfortable.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Mhm.
And in teams that I've been a part of in the past, it seems like architects are even passive in that they do say that we do this project type, it attracts a certain client, and then the culture of that team seems to reflect that client type or that project type. And so it kind of creates you don't take control. You're encouraging people to take control of that story and really, I love how you talk about telling your own story. I also really appreciated Mark's comment about how we kind of got ourselves in this mess that our professional organizations squashed the momentum of Wright, Corbu, and Grobrius and others, starting with their rules and no self-promotion culture. And it's now our individual responsibilities to tell our individual stories as architects. So many of us are still waiting for others to tell our story. Branding for architects is more than attracting great clients, it's about rebuilding the profession. And so, as a whole, we're each little pieces of building the, and that seems daunting to me as a sole practitioner, that I don't just have to tell my own story, but I also have to heal the brokenness of what contractors think of architects and even what like my uncle who's a banker thinks of architects who design their own houses that are very specialty and not resellable in his opinion. But it's like there's all these broken perceptions that we're trying to fix. And I love that you're starting with the individual and building that forward. Do you have any thoughts on that idea of that profession as a whole?
Yeah, I think that again, you're seeing that architect mentality where you're not just seeing the issue. You, Katie, immediately were like, but look at all the work to do, which is beautiful. Also, I think to give y'all some props specifically, I think the industry, a lot of people in your space that don't give out all that. They're just doing their thing in their firm. The EntreArchitect community is a deep, thoughtful, collaborative, loving community that is considering how do we rebuild architecture as a concept. And so you need the disruptors, as you are, to make efforts. I mean, it's not going to change if no one makes any efforts at it. And I think this is contingent. This is a community that gives a shit about that and is trying to address it. And if that begins with individual reflection, like I think that's too, like that is how it begins. It begins with individual work, always, no matter the endeavor. And so that's a great start there. Yeah.
Did you have a rebellious streak growing up? That where you were able to pursue this?
That's so funny. That's a great question. I've never been asked that before. I did, but I think now that I'm thinking about it, I think I was always aware of my brand and my family. So I come from a family. I have I have 3 siblings. So I'm one of 4, and I'm the only girl. And I come from a very Italian American family. So there's a lot of like the masculinity, and so I rebelled in my own way, but I kind of always made sure that on the surface it all looked good. That I think I only broke curfew once, actually twice, but one time I got stung by a scorpion, and that's why I broke curfew. I was in the hospital. This other time was just, rebelliousness. So I kind of like on the surface, it looked like the brand was, but underneath them going on. So yeah, I did. And I think I always had a defiant streak, particularly when it came to my brothers and like what girls should do, or how I was going to be perceived in the world. So a little bit, yeah. But I never dyed my hair purple or got my nose pierced or anything.
Don't knock it out yet.
Yeah.
No.
Jeff just got his tattoo a few weeks ago.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes. It could be
Yeah.
coming
Well,
from.
I think what you were just saying, I think is also a good lesson for the profession, because for all of the complaining that we'll do, about the public's perception or lack of understanding of what architects do, et cetera, it's our fault, right? Yeah, we could blame HGTV or we could blame realtors or whatever, but if we aren't out there rebelling, if we want to say it that way, and saying, no, this is what I do, this is how I do it. Others may do it this way, others may do it slightly differently, but if we're not out there promoting, this rebellion against what it is that we're complaining against, we're never going to change that narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Exactly. And, again, I think being a mosaic thinker and seeing all the pieces is such a gift, but in certain instances it can be a hindrance too. And so that's when it's like a callback to that simple thing that you can, like, one of my favorite mantras is do what you can where you are. Just like start with that. I think the other thing though, just to speak to the context, since we're talking about context and clarity for architects, is just a lot of periods of scarcity in your industry, and and that breeds competition, and I think a lot of the people in this community have weathered those storms, and you both are nodding, and yeah, it affects us, right? The way that we see carrying forward, maybe that does make you a little bit more passive, and it makes you a little bit more malleable to whatever the client needs and whatever the project calls for. Um, so I understand how that gets built over time. And then that also contributes to, like, don't do anything too crazy.
Yeah, we
Um,
kind of draw into ourselves. And then the idea of like
mhm,
content creation and putting it out there seems so counterintuitive to that. And it's hard to decide like what to share because architects can get into the esoteric details. And I
mhm.
don't think our clients really need to know what kind of sealant is going along the foundation wall, even though that may just make us very interested. So how are you helping clients navigate like what story they share? Because there's a different conversation of that identity, but then there's those questions that you ask so well about like what do the people you're serving need to know? What are they interested in and how you're shaping that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a few things pop up for me. I mean, first order of business is always to tend to the foundation. You'll appreciate a lot of my allegories here. So once you have that foundation of your vision, your mission, your words, your I'm using all this root and river language. So it's basically that core part, your message, your ideal audience, your differentiators. Then you can start. First of all, there's about 1,000 stories to tell from all of those things I just mentioned that are relevant because, again, it's about being findable. Your clients don't really care about the sealant. They do care about what you value, regardless of what kind of client they are, what kind of the project, what kind of project it is. So there's a thousand. And then you layer into that and through that the things that you have passion for. And so, I think you have the foundation that's about who you are and what the firm is, because anybody can buy anything at any time. And what makes you truly different is what you believe and the experiences that you want to give to your clients, if I'm being really direct. So I think that that's the majority of the seed, and then peppering in other pieces of expertise that you're excited to share about and around, and being somewhat consistent, putting some parameters around what that is with an eye towards the strategy of where you want to build your base. Is that helpful? Did that answer your question, Katie?
It is. It's sharing, like you said, that story of purpose rather than sharing stories of solutions. We
Yes.
are knowledge leaders, and so sometimes it's tempting to default to that knowledge and write those articles that HGTV has or other product manufacturers do tons of those different articles. And it, to your point of differentiation, what are we doing that's different than them?
Mhm.
So that is really helpful to kind of cull the list and get to that, like, just start with that one that's kind of most aligned. I love that.
To compete with HGTV, you can't. They have way too big of a machine. So yeah, it's just about being you, drawing from what you can do that nobody else can do, what you believe that nobody else believes, or that concept.
And so I guess when I was reading about that, you also compared it to thinking about a small town newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And that implies like this intimacy of the stories that you're sharing, kind of very specific stories and a closeness to connect with people. And that seems counterintuitive to how our world keeps conglomerating into larger and larger sections. And so how to navigate, it's almost like little spider webs reaching out to your people to build that sort of network and culture with who you're reaching out to.
Yeah. You said building that network. I almost think it's about noticing, because I think we have so much connection. We're a part of a lot of communities we may not even register as communities, right? Using that modern language. And it's about telling those stories that, again, abound. I mean, I'm sure any one of you on this call would think about a client that you just loved working with. And maybe the project was you just loved working with them, and maybe telling a little story about that. Somebody asked me recently, like, how do you share about awards without being overly promotional? And so I talked about how when I was trying to decide where to go to college, I really thought I was going to go away, leave Arizona, go somewhere exciting, Ivy. And I got waitlisted and didn't get into the schools I really wanted to go to. So I ended at Arizona State University at their honors college. And it was sort of like, ho hum, I'll go there and then I'll study abroad and whatever. But it came to be this really important place that I loved. I went from a small school all throughout like grade school and high school to a huge university, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. And it became an important piece for me. And now I was just honored as one of 100, which is an award they give to alumni. So it has a deep meaning to me, because I kind of discounted ASU and then it became important. And now they're recognizing alumni and their contributions. So that was my example for how you tell us. You don't say, I won the Sun Devil 100. You say, this is what this means to me. And I know it's not the biggest deal in the world, but here's the story behind it. You saw this more than just a list. And so that storytelling plays such a huge role, and we have so many stories at our fingertips that can be then woven into some other thing of more significance, or something you're really wanting to share without seeming promotional.
Well, what if you share a story that maybe doesn't go as far as to offend somebody, but what if you tell a story that turns somebody off, or you tell a story that somebody reads it, hears it, watches it, whatever the medium is, and they say, yeah, that doesn't resonate with me, or no, I'm not sure I want to work with that person. What happens then?
You're like, good. Yay. Or you engage that person in dialogue. I mean, so the analogy of the small town newspaper, pretty honestly, and that's where I started my career, is in a local newspaper. And I think that, when we were just kind of in the early days of my career in the newsroom, it was like, if you have people mad at you on both sides of the issue, you've done your job, right? So when I first started and wanting to be liked and not wanting people to call and yell at me, I was like, oh, I hope this doesn't piss anyone off. But what I came to realize over the years is that I'm in service of discussion. And I truly believe that. I believe in expression, and I believe in the power of language to surface ideas and to change our thoughts. And so any feedback is feedback. Is somebody engaging with the ideas, whether they're saying, I hate that, I disagree, or And that takes a step. Most people say, I hate that I disagree, and they go away. But if they say, I hate that I disagree, and they make that statement in some way, ooh, they're engaging. So you can say, thank you for the feedback, or just silently kind of know, okay, this is not for you, which is also one of our mantras, like, this is not for you. And you are not for everyone. Your stories are not for everyone. I read obsessively, but there's some writers that I just don't gel with, right? There's lots of other options. So
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
no scarcity of that.
Yeah. And I think, like you said earlier, we're always going to be in service of clients. And they're, because of our culture, because of the nature of our business, et cetera, there are going to be clients that we complain about.
Mhm.
And wouldn't it be great if we could reduce the number of clients that we complained about? Right? If this story turns somebody away to another architect, great, because they would probably end up being one of those clients that we complained about. So why not save ourselves? And I know that's a scary thought. I know it is, and I've got stories
Mhm.
about saying yes to clients out of desperation, right?
Mhm.
Because we didn't have any other work. That's real, right? That's reality, and it is scary. But in the ideal world, if I can reduce the number of people that I have to deal with that I would not be happy dealing with, I think that's a win, personally.
Absolutely. And, I said this in Austin, that branding is much more about repelling than it is about attracting, right? It is about repelling the things that are not aligned as quickly and efficiently as possible so they don't become a drain on our time and our energy and our spirit in some cases. I think what we see is the fear, and what we miss oftentimes is the fact that with greater awareness, so if there is a moment of desperation and you're desperate, I need this client, but who your ideal audience is, and you're like, I see they're not aligned here and here. That's where I'm going to struggle. Okay, I'm still committed to it because I need this client. You're still walking into that way more educated yourself, and you're like, okay, this is misaligned. I'm only going to go to this point with it, or I'm not going to personalize it the way I would with another client that I know is very aligned. So it just gives you more information. All been in those moments where we have to take on subject. But when you know what you really want, it actually helps navigate that process of dealing with someone.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great point. You go in eyes wide open at that point.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
nowadays, conflict is almost unavoidable. And so it just goes back to your point of how that foundation is so essential that if you have any cracks in that foundation, any foreign materials, it's not going to hold up to that scrutiny. So if you
Mm,
do have that pure hold to what you know is true and holding you true and keeping that at the center focus, um, gosh, that's kind of the only way to survive through any defiance or be defiant against the
mm,
naysayers. I'm curious, what
mhm.
is the biggest defiance you've had in your business as it's grown and adapted? Like, are there any branches you've had to cut off to like keep growing the right way?
Oh my god, yeah. Yes. And I'm a sentimental person, so anytime we have to cut something off, I just labor over it. But you have to. I think the one that jumps to mind was, I think it was like 2018, or maybe it's 2019, and we kind of hit a bit of a lull. And my then business partner and I got together and we're like, well, maybe we're going down. Like maybe the world doesn't want this. Maybe, intrinsic branding isn't for everyone. And so we're like, okay, well, we can modify, right? We can modify this, we can change. And they were like, no. And what we decided was to double down on what we believed, on who we wanted to work with, get even clearer, spend more time going back to the foundation for ourselves, and then just go forward. Because we thought, if we're going to go down, we're going to go down being who we are. He often says, like, let the world see who you are, and let them deal with it. It's this, we'll know one way or the other. But if we go out being true, then we'll truly know. If we go out being trying to kind of massage myself into a place where it looks good to you, we're not going to know. We're not going to be any better off than we are right now. So I think that was important moment, and it really gave birth to this next sort of period of growth that we experienced after that.
Yeah, I think that that idea or that action of doubling down is really important too. John says it sounds scary, but it's probably the right thing to do. Yeah, I think I was thinking about what you were just saying, and if I'm melding myself to I don't remember if that's how you said it, but if I'm melding myself to meet what you think looks good, you're right. I'm never going to know, right? If this does go down, or if I continue to struggle because I'm trying to comply, I'm trying to change, I'm trying to match these expectations versus a double down. If I'm in my mind, at least when I say I'm doubling down, it's like, okay, I'm going to double down. I'm going to go even harder on this. I'm going to do even more work in this direction, or make sure I'm focusing all of my work in this direction. And the market's going to tell me, right? And I think one of the things that happens with a lot of us is we're lukewarm, right? Well, I don't quite do enough work. I don't quite make Sorry, everybody. I don't quite make enough phone calls or send enough emails or whatever you're doing for your business development activities, et cetera. I know I'm taking this a little out, to other parts of the
Mhm,
business, but I think that's the danger, right? If I'm not going all in, then I'm probably not going to succeed anyway.
mhm.
So I totally agree with what John is saying, that it can be scary, but yeah, business can be scary, right?
Yeah, I can't remove the fear. Like, I think that's another thing we want as human beings, like, "Oh, I'll find my brand and then that'll be great. I'll be bold and excited." No, you'll be afraid every time,
Mhm.
and that's good. That is a sign preparing to do something difficult. That's what fear is, false energy appearing real, something coming up that's getting us focused, aware, present to say something that matters or do something that's risky. That's the whole intention of fear. So this magical thinking about the removal of fear or risk is just that magical. But I love this question from this link. I'm not sure who it is, but do you think
Echols.
with "We're Not for Everyone" thank you, creates a bit of self-reflection, a self-selection for clients? Totally, I do. That's why I recommend it. As in, a client might be more motivated to work with you because they want to feel like they are exclusive enough. Yes, um, and I bristle a little bit at exclusive at that language, but I understand and take the point. I think it's aligned. It is about alignment, and this is really borne out in consumer behavior. But today, people want to work and support companies that they feel really aligned with. So I think that that exclusivity is around kind of alignment. And I think clients are looking for an experience. That's another trend that we've seen rising, right? So when you share about the experience, that you're trying to craft a certain experience, they react to that like, yes, I want that. I don't want this to just be we don't operate like most marketing for agencies, right? So a lot of times in that model, you come in, you interview the client, you go away, you come back with a big ta-da moment, and you get their reaction. I worked with an agency once, and they called it. They referred to that second meeting as the like wipe and cry or something like that, and I was like, this is terrible. Like, you're expecting the client to tear apart what you put together. We are collaborative. We're in the moment. We're creating together. We're unearthing. It's a process of you showing me something and me kind of going in to dig a little deeper. So that's part of the experience that we're trying to give. So people who don't want that experience should not work with us. They should work with if you prefer the other experience. So I think it's just getting, when you're saying we're not for everyone and here's why, it's giving them the clarity that they're really seeking in terms of alignment of values and in terms of alignment on the experience that they want to have.
Yeah, I think that's, we're at times we're kind of dancing around Start With Why, Simon Sinek, and
Yeah.
others that we've seen their TED Talks, et cetera. And I think you said this earlier at some point, Emily, some version of this. There's so many choices out there. No matter where you are, no matter how small your town is, there are a lot of architects or other service providers that people could choose from, and everybody is looking for a reason to make the choice. And if they want that to be the lowest fee, then you get to decide if you want to play that game. Um, but if you give them a real reason, something for them to, as you said, something that they can align with, and that becomes the reason that they hire you. That's why we're doing this, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think in that scenario, it's not, we often go to that, well, choose me energy. And I think what I'm saying is instead of choose me, pick me, it's here I am. This is what I believe. Like, here I am. Here we are.
Yeah.
This is who we are. And then it changes on an energetic level. It really changes the feel of that discussion that you start to have with someone who may be interested in your services.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly right. I realize now we're actually past the top of the hour, which this went very, very quickly. This is very fun, as always,
Yes.
talking with Emily about intrinsic branding and all things, um, uh, unearthing the brands within us and within our organizations. Um, so, Emily, thank you very much for this conversation. For those of you out there that want to know more or want to get in touch with Emily, the URL is in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen right now. Rootandriver.com is where you will find Emily and her team there. Reach out. She's done so much with this community. We bestowed upon her the honorary honorary community membership earlier. In case you missed that, she has spoken to us at the annual meeting. She has done webinars for us. She's worked with folks in our community. So go to rootandriver.com, reach out to Emily and her team, and figure out what you can do to develop this alignment for your ideal clients. That would be a great gift back to Emily for so much that she has given to our community. So rootandriver.com is the place to find that. I want to say thank you to Katie for co-hosting this with me, and as well as the past several weeks. I don't even know, 5, 6. I'm not sure how many weeks we've been going since we got restarted here. We're going to take a break. We're going to take a summer break, and we're going to come back for our fall season right after Labor Day. So look forward to many new interviews for Context and Clarity Live with great guests like Emily. And if you have any recommendations, any suggestions, say, hey, we need to talk to this person on Context and Clarity Live. Reach out to me or Katie or Mark and let us know that. But we're booking for our fall season now. But 4th of July is next week, which at least in the United States kind of kicks off a lot of summer vacations for people. So we're just going to take the break for the summer. We'll be back in the fall. So I appreciate all of you for all of this. I say this every time, but I still really do mean this. If it weren't for you, we would not be having this conversation with Emily. And so selfishly, thank you for the opportunity to have all these great conversations that we've had. This is, I think for Context and Clarity Live, we're something like 150 conversations in or something like that. So I appreciate all of you for all of that.
And Emily's leaving us with a beautiful message, taking a break, thinking inward, looking at that foundation. It's a great call to reset over breaks.
Yeah, it really is. That's a great point. As you take a break this summer, you can think about these things that Emily has been sharing with us today. Glad you brought that up, Katie. That's a good point. Please be well. Stay safe. Keep those around you safe and well. Find a little bit of time to breathe, relax, find some way to rejuvenate. We're going to rejuvenate for the summer, and we're going to come back ready to go back at it in the fall, right after, I guess. We've got weird school schedules here. Maybe it's after your kids go back to school. My kids will be in school 2 months before we come back. So have a great summer, everybody, and we'll be back right after Labor Day. Emily, thank you. Katie, thank you. And everybody else, thank you. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.